All right, we're up bright and early. We're dark and early. I was watching this video by Joe Scott, Answers with Joe, and he was talking about AI and the pressure. And I'm not saying anything wrong here. I was gonna make an interesting point based on how he was talking. The pressure of these companies to develop the new cell phone. I think this video is from a year ago. I don't think it was recent. I was trying to sleep and it was on in the background. And of course, he said something that made it where I couldn't sleep. But it wasn't me. Didn't say anything wrong. He was talking about the pressure on these companies to integrate AI. I'm thinking this is what he was saying, and build the new cell phone. Right, the pressure is immense, and he kept saying trillions and trillions of dollars. He kept talking about the quantity, and indeed, we hear that more and more now. Trillions and trillions and trillions. We hear it all the time. We also hear billions a lot, way more than we used to. Used to the de facto, and so I wrote down a few things just to make sure I don't get off track. When I was younger, millions was the common big number. And the idea was if you had $1 million, you wouldn't have to work again for the rest of your life. I'm in my mid 30s also, for context. I know I look much younger or older. Um, Slowly, over time, it became clear 1 million wasn't enough. I think in the aftermath of the GFC and even though there was deflation and stuff, eventually it just became clear $1 million isn't that much. And all of a sudden, that was also huge because the GFC is whenever government spending bills in the trillions started to become, I pop $1 trillion. We did like 6 trillion last year or something, didn't we? Aren't we doing like 5, 6 trillion a year? Which kind of is what I'm talking about here. I think we've all played a mind trick on ourselves, and we haven't even realized it in the background. And it's a illusion of money. And funny enough, money is in and of itself somewhat illusory, isn't it? Because we've had multiple stages of how people have interacted with money in the past. I just point this out. And to put them out simply, the first was when people directly exchanged hard currency or bartered to exchange stuff. The second was a phase where you could have paper currency, where gold could be held in deposit, but then so that heaviness and the difficulties that come along with transacting in gold are negated, and then certificates of deposit can be transferred from person to person. So you still have this massive restraining factor of the weight of gold, the scarcity of gold, the security of gold or silver or another good in kind, and a certificate to ease that transfer. However, every certificate was backing up something. Something happened in Europe, though, like 800 years ago or something like that, where the holders of these gold reserves realized that the amount of potential profit from issuing basically fraudulent certificates was, incalculable. That you could print money. Why hire an alchemist to crack the code? You can achieve the same effect with a piece of paper. Well, our entire financial system is now based on the concept that money, and this didn't happen overnight also. This has been a process, but now we're deep in it, right? That money is not real. Money is not a function of an actual asset being traded. It's a leveraged asset. It's a liability. It's a debt. If you actually try to explain money to most people, it doesn't make sense to them because it's actually not intuitive, because it's actually probably a really bad idea how we do it. Can we ever get out of it? I don't know. Is it a bad idea? I don't know. Do I have a better idea? Of course not. This is really good. But let me point out a couple stats to make this clear why when we're saying trillion all the time, that we might be tricking our brain into thinking our society and civilization has been hyper productive and we're hyper virile and strong. And I would suggest we're actually seeing we're being tricked by our own brain. Let me just point out a couple things here. M2, which is money supply. And this is, of course, there's multiple forms of money because money is more hypothetical than real now. For example, the paper currency in circulation is something like 3% of the money in existence. Okay, most of it's super hypothetical to the point where even paper doesn't define the scarcity of it. Like, it's less scarce than paper. And to be fair, a printed currency bill, once you put the ink on it and all of the technology, it's a pretty scarce thing in and of itself. But honestly, if it doesn't have a special number on it, it's worth whatever the going rate is, and that drops precipitously over time, doesn't it? We've seen that. M2 in January of the year 2000 was $4.7 trillion. M2 in June 2025 was $22 trillion. So from 2000 to 2025, we jumped from 4.7 trillion to 22 trillion. To round that up and down a bit, from 5 trillion to 20 trillion, we could say 300% increase. So a 300% increase in just that sector of the money supply, which would kind of be like everyday deposits and transactions between people. I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I've read each M. So when we look at all these top-end valuations on stuff that have gone especially insane, right? Because now we know $1 million's not enough. Honestly, like what would be life money now for sure, where you could be rich and retired for life. For some reason, 5 million jumps to my head, but then I pull back because I think, well, what's the inflation going to be in 20, 30, 40 years? This is also the issue at the heart of our economy that could cause rates to go even higher, right? Because why do you want to lend if you think inflation is going to be brutal? You have to lend at a higher rate. That's why I'd want to lend at a higher rate. So basically, when you expand the money supply by 300% in just a sector, and then once you unleash the modern banking system and the leverage and the derivatives that go along with it, on just one single created dollar, you can generate then. And then remember what the reserve requirement when COVID hit was in place. We had a 10% banking reserve requirement when COVID hit. That was suspended and it has not come back. So to what degree has the money become even more hypothetical? Probably a lot. They do the stress test, and you can go look up that data. I can't remember. Last time I looked at it, it was like they had 3% reserve. I think that's what it was. So anyways, these big numbers that we're throwing out, like Elon Musk, who's worth $300 billion or $400 billion, and Tesla's worth $1 trillion, and Apple's worth $1.1 trillion. When you take into fact the 300% increase in the M2 money supply put into the banking system through leverage, hyper leverage, and then this social behavior of mass investment in the stock market that really zeroed in on certain companies. Yeah, you got some crazy valuations, you did. And so now everyone's walking around talking trillions and trillions, and we're talking about how we're pouring our civilization into this, different projects, whatever they are. More and more, just a warning alert to Western people. There's no real room to invest anymore. Invest what? We're taking out debt to just pay the bills. Invest in what? That's the joke about making an investment fund for the American people. We'd have to get on the right side of interest rates to start with. And that's not going to happen. Don't we have to refinance like $7 or $10 trillion of debt this year? Haven't we been doing that at these higher rates? Ooh, that's brutal. What are you going to do, lower them? You already have this insanity. You lower rates and you just expand the derivatives and expand this ability to leverage. It's just going to go even more and more crazy. Anyone getting the feeling this whole thing's a Ponzi scheme? So anyways, when someone's saying trillions, if you get the false impression that Western civilization is so virile that we're having to come up with new numbers to calculate how awesome and incredibly powerful we are doing stuff, that's not what's happening at all. You're literally observing the opposite. I think we're observing the opposite. We're observing the collapse of our currency. Not to sound hyperbolically, but yeah, I could pull up a graph and anyone would call what's happened to our currency since 1971 an utter collapse. And boy, gosh, why is it collapsing the currency that existed and generating massive new amounts in the financial system? Then who's getting that money first? Because boy, I bet they're doing pretty good. Almost suspicious. Okay. Well, and then last thing, for an example, compare the cost to build something here as compared to, like, say, in China or something. There's obviously a million different routes to take with this that you could say for or against, saying America's fine, America's not fine, the West is fine, America's not fine, China's fine, or China's not fine. But, we keep trying to build high-speed rails here, and we can't do it. California and Texas have both been working on it for like a decade and got nothing done. The cost of billions of dollars, and I think the Texas project, the major European partner, just pulled out. Not just, but recently, over the past year. What's the worth of all these big numbers if we can't do anything? I know the cost to sustain myself is pretty brutal. My family. I know it's a lot more than a lot of people in other places of the world have to pay. But, I have access to the amazing American job market. So, all right, guys, I'll just point out, you know, if we don't take time to, shake your head and context it, right, you get drawn into the illusion, your eyes get crossed. Let's be real. A lot of our growth has been software. And in a lot of ways, we've become tremendously weaker. All right. Toodaloo. Have a lovely day.